Welcome back to Collectability. Today we're going to discuss rare, important, unusual, marvelous, and available to buy Patek Philippe complicated vintage wristwatches. I borrowed some of those superlative terms from recent auction catalogs because it's so much fun to see the descriptions in print today. So I hope you appreciate that those descriptions can be used here at Collectability too. I also want to ask you a favor. Please push that subscribe button today and comment below. It means so much to us and ensures the future of this channel. So, one of the most important complaints that I've received is that collectors do not like waiting lists. They hate to wait. And we are here today to tell you there are pieces available to buy now where you don't have to wait months. In many cases, you can't even get on Patek Philippe waiting list with your local retailer. But here at Collectability, we offer superlative timepieces that you can buy now. I hear the situation is improving with waiting lists, but only marginally. But why wait when you can buy something extraordinary today? And unlike most modern watches that you'll have other chances to buy down the road, these vintage watch purchases are often once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. So that's enough with all the QVC talk today. Let's get started. First, let's take a look at two reference 130s in stainless steel. Now, Collectability has had 130s in the past. We had a beautiful sector dial a few years back. And I have never had two at the same time, two steel 130s, and it's my pleasure to share it with you these today. These two examples are similar but very different. There are 270 examples of steel 130s known to have been made, but only 100 are known to exist today. Only 100 have surfaced. And to have two of those here in front of me is a pleasure and privilege. So the first I'd like to show you is a reference 130A made in 1943. This was sold in the final months of World War II in 1945. And by the way, the retail was only $425 at that time. It was still a lot of money because consider in 1945, the average car in America cost $1,800. This watch was a sizable sum then, and it's even a more sizable sum now. So in retrospect, it was quite a great deal back in 1945. So a bit about the history of the reference 130. They started production in 1934, and they were still available to buy in the catalog as late as the 1960s. They were considered a sports watch of the time, 33.5 millimeters, and there were numerous dial configurations available, including Breguet, Roman, Arabic, sector, black dials, and of course, two-tone. This particular example with the long signature where it says Patek Philippe & Co. and that small indices you'll note on the dial, I think is absolutely stunning. It's balanced, it's beautiful, and it's the type of watch that belongs on a collector's wristwatch. And if you're looking for your first vintage timepiece and want to jump in at the high end of vintage collectibles, you cannot go wrong with the steel 130. Now, here is the second 130 I have on offer today. This is quite different from the piece we just looked at. It's a little earlier. It was made and sold in 1941. And the first thing you'll notice is the long batons that are in yellow gold. And you'll also notice it has Roman numerals that are in yellow gold. And this point is very important, and it's a very elegant flourish on a steel 130. Next, you might note that it has a crown that's also yellow gold. The one thing that really is the first bit of information I need to know when I see yellow gold on a steel 130 is, what does the archive say? And yes, the archive confirms that there are applied gold indices, and this is so important when purchasing a 130, is that the dial description is accurate. Now, the look on the wrist it's bold, it's elegant, and I have to say, if there's a 130 in your future, this might be the watch. Now, I'm going to jump forward just a few years to a watch called the reference 2597, and the reason I use the word jump is because there's a jump hour. This is a 2597 HS, in the Patek Philippe language. HS stands for heure sautante, which means jumping hours. And the reason it has jumping hours is it's a travel time. By the push of a button, you can go forward or backward 1 hour. So if you're traveling going east, that's advances 1 hour per. And then if you're going west, it goes 1 hour per time zone. It's a very useful complication. And when Patek Philippe released this in 1959, they called it the cross country. This was meant for domestic travel. So if you're traveling to LA in the jet age, you need to go back 3 hours. And it's one of the complications that I think is so elegant. If I was wearing this on the wrist, you might just think it's a 570 unless you really know what you're looking at. And those two little buttons for the forward and backward that you can see on the side are what conveys that it is a 2597. Now, I had one of these before in the world of collectability, and it sold within minutes. And it's so much fun to have our second 2597 available, and it's available now. Now, it was first retailed back in the day, circa 1960, for a hefty price tag of $1,000. Now, if you compare that to what a 1518 sold for in 1950, 1518 retailed for $1,500 US. So it was important money then as it is now. And it's also an important look on the wrist, because look at that, 35.5 millimeters of perfection in this classic Calatrava case. Now the cases were made by Antoine Gerlach, which is one of the most celebrated case makers of the era. And Gerlach also made the cases for the Reference 96, the 570, and famously the 3448. But from 1958 to 1962, the 2597 was the travel time of choice. It is estimated that approximately 90 movements were made for this caliber. So the fact that there was less than 100 of these known is extraordinary. It was made in two series, from 58 to 61. The first series was made, and the second series went from 62 to 1977. And you'll note the early series have 2 hands, and the later series have 3 hands, so you're able to check for home time at the same time. So you have 2-hour hands. But keep in mind, there were upgrade kits available even up to 20 years ago. I heard of upgrade kits that were available as you could take a first series and make it have a second series with the 3 hands. So be mindful if you do have a 3-hander. Are those 3 hands original? It's tough to know, to be honest. So far, 48 of the Reference 2597s have been identified on the market, and that is in yellow and in pink gold. So there aren't many of these out there. So this particular example is from 1960, and you'll notice the dial adorned with the gold batons, and it's just aged. This dial is just aged absolutely beautiful. It has the purling that I love to see on the perimeter of the dial, and this is the type of watch that belongs on a collector's wrist. So it's something you could cherish and truly hold on for the next generation. Now this watch has a bit of a surprise, and that's the case back. Let's see if the camera can catch what it says. You'll see it's engraved by Mr. McLeod from Rhode Island. You'll also notice it has some numbers on the case back. That is Mr. McLeod's Social Security number. So if he lost this watch, hopefully it would find his way back to him. Now, I don't think Mr. McLeod is still with us considering the age of the watch, but we'll always remember him because he's immortalized in the back of this timepiece and the address of his beach house in Rhode Island. So now let's move forward in our little time machine a few years and discuss the Reference 3970. If you haven't read it yet, please see our recent guide to the 3970 written by no other than Tony Traina, who has recently done some amazing writing for us. And this 3970 article is not to be missed because you'll have new insight into why the 3970 is so important, why the collecting community is talking about. After you read Tony's article, you'll never look at a 3970 in the same way. So the first 3970 I'd like to show you today is this rose gold beauty. This was originally sold in 1992, And you'll note the calendar has a German calendar. This is the celebrated German dial, which I've seen very rarely on rose gold 3970s. Everything about this full set masterpiece is awe-inspiring, from the case color, the condition, and to the quality of the watch overall. With recent interest and scholarship in 3970 growing, it is amazing to find out that there are still specimen examples out there to buy. So I encourage you, if you don't have one in your collection now, reach out to us, because it might be time to buy a 3970 while there's still some quality examples out there on the marketplace. So this particular rose gold 3970 has its sapphire back on the back of the watch, because it's from the 3rd series. It has 2 backs, and it's also accompanied by its 2nd solid back. Next, I'd like to show you something that I have never had before on the site, and that is a reference 3970 line 2J. So this is the famous bracelet version of the 3970. It is hefty, to say the least. A reference 3970 line 2J from 1992. What's really notable about this watch from the 3rd series is its lapidated baton hour markers, which distinguish the series, and the design elements of the dial itself, which are outlined in Tony's article. You'll just see a real streamlined approach to the design of a perpetual chronograph layout. With the bracelet, it just gives this watch a whole different aesthetic than a so-called regular lugged 3970. It's a rare offering. We've only seen 10 of these ever surface, these 3970 lines too, with these bracelets. So a lot of people are talking about 3970s in a whole different light now as scholarship unfolds. And when I have this on my wrist, it's the kind of piece I don't want to take off. Just look at it. I absolutely love it. So there you have it. 5 important watches that you don't need to wait for, and they're available now on Collectability. I want to thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to Collectability on YouTube, Instagram, and also TikTok, so that you don't miss any future posts. Thanks again for listening, and enjoy the hunt.